One of the biggest unknowns of this year's NASCAR silly season has officially revealed their plans for next season, and it sounds like Bubba Wallace could become a partial team owner. We've got a lot to discuss. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Hope your week is off to a good start. We have a lot to talk about. Oh boy, a lot of silly season to catch up on. It's a busy Monday, and I'm pleased to say that today is not about rumors. It's not about random speculation. We have hard facts, brand new reports, brand new announcements to look at and talk about this evening. So let's get right to it. The big news here Monday afternoon. Brad Keselowski, arguably the biggest name of this year's free agency, announced today that he will be staying with Team Penske for the 2021 season. We'll be right back there in that number 2 car. Official details of this new contract were not revealed. However, I saw a report from the Associated Press that said this deal is likely for 1 year, just through the end of 2021. The first major domino to fall in what is likely going to be a busy, silly season over the next several months, but this is great news, in my opinion. It's good for the sport when a top driver is able to compete in a top car, especially when things are as unpredictable as they are now, and sponsorship concerns even before the pandemic were certainly prevalent with that 2 car. Miller Lite, which of course has a very long history supporting the 2 car, has all but ended their sponsorship of the team at this point. They're only the primary sponsor for 1 race this year. So with sponsorship still being a concern, the fact that Team Penske decided to go with Brad Keselowski for another year, and the fact that Brad Keselowski is going to stick with them, I still think that's great news, especially given all the uncertainty going around the world, around the sport of NASCAR right now. So this is good news overall for NASCAR, but I think this is also good news for Brad Keselowski and Roger Penske. Now, a 1-year deal, and of course, given all the circumstances, I doubt that contract is as heavy as Brad Keselowski was hoping for when he began free agency this year. Pandemic, of course, might have thrown a wrench into his future plans, but at the very least, it is only a 1-year deal for Brad Keselowski, so in 12 months, he can reassess, and the sport will hopefully know where they're at that point. The teams will all know kind of where they're at with the new race car being set to debut in 2022. Everyone's going to kind of have a better idea in a year. Perhaps at that point, Keselowski can sign a longer contract, perhaps a little wealthier contract with either Team Penske or perhaps with another team. And the reason this is good for Roger Penske and his race team is that this keeps their options very much open for 2022. This is not a long-term commitment. They already made a longer-term commitment to Ryan Blaney at the beginning of this year, signing him to a 3-year extension, but now at least when it comes to Brad Keselowski, probably their most expensive driver on their payroll if I had to guess. Former champion, lots of experience, all that stuff, but now this does keep Penske's options open beyond 2022. Once again, with the next gen car coming and promising to bring with it a brand new business model for a lot of the race teams. Much like Keselowski, a year from now, I think Roger Penske will have a much better understanding of what the future holds. So while a 1-year contract is likely not what Brad Keselowski was hoping for at the start of 2020, given the circumstances, at least it keeps both his future and Roger Penske's future kind of flexible. They're not locked into kind of a mediocre deal for too long. They have the chance here in just a few months to renegotiate and maybe make something new happen. But Brad Keselowski staying with Team Penske, the team that really gave him his big break at the beginning of the last decade, and of course Brad Keselowski won the 2012 Cup Series championship at a very young age. Even now, almost a decade later, he won last night. He now has 3 wins on the season. That puts him 3rd on the playoff grid as of now. He's once again proven to be a formidable foe, a formidable challenger for the Cup Series title. Year in, year out, he is a threat to win races. He is a threat to win championships as long as he's teamed up with Team Penske. And I'm honestly impressed this year that working with new crew chief Jeremy Bullins, they kind of have a new relationship, at least a new Cup Series relationship this year. They've had some success in the Xfinity Series in the past, but I'm impressed with how well the two of them have worked together this year. And it shows the fact that Keselowski's willing to sign this 1-year extension. It shows that at least Brad Keselowski has a little bit of confidence in Team Penske going forward. Of course, a few months back, kind of when free agency, the silly season first started to be talked about, a lot of rumors had Brad Keselowski going to Hendrick Motorsports because Hendrick Motorsports had what Brad Keselowski needed: full-time sponsorship and a competitive ride. And at the time, Hendrick Motorsports seemed to be on the upswing. Things have slowed down over there at Hendrick for the time being, and Brad Keselowski and Team Penske are once again dominating. So over the last couple months especially, it sounded like Rick Hendrick's priorities may have changed a little bit, and it was sounding more and more likely that Brad Keselowski was going to stay in the 2 car. But once again, I'm happy for him. Brad Keselowski is a top-tier driver he deserves to drive a top-tier race car. So I'm happy to see that pairing between Penske and Keselowski continue for at least one more season. And I'm also excited because that means in a year, we get to do this all over again. We get to speculate about his future. We get to hear all these different wild rumors. I'm excited for it. The fun never stops. So Brad Keselowski re-signing with Team Penske is one of the first pieces to fall into place regarding this year's silly season, but there are still several other pretty big name drivers, as well as several other big time race cars that are looking for their future options. And so like I said a moment ago, earlier this year, Brad Keselowski was seemingly the favorite to go to the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports with Jimmy Johnson retiring. So with Keselowski re-signing with Penske, who is the front runner for the 48 car now? It sounds like, based on reports I've seen from reputable reporters, articles I've read, tweets I've come across, it sounds like if Erik Jones is not able to get an agreement done with Joe Gibbs Racing, he could be the front runner to move over to Hendrick Motorsports and drive the 48 car. It sounds like his future at Joe Gibbs Racing is largely dependent on if Stanley DeWalt re-sign, if they're confident with Erik Jones as their driver. Of course, Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota do have Christopher Bell, of course, who could easily come in and replace Erik Jones. And as much as I like Erik Jones, I have a feeling Christopher Bell could do at least as well as Jones has been able to do in that car. That whole team, as I talked about in yesterday's video, I think is kind of in shambles. I think that whole 20 team, from crew chief, driver, pit crew, perhaps needs to be blown up and rebuilt. The idea of Erik Jones going to the 48 3-4 months ago, I didn't really like this idea. I didn't think it was a smart move for Rick Hendrick, who I believe should put a veteran driver in that seat. I also didn't think it was a smart move for Erik Jones, because the Toyotas, Joe Gibbs Racing, consistently are faster, I think, than the Hendrick Chevys. But as this year has gone on and I see the dysfunction within that 20 team, how many mistakes they make, whether it's driver, whether it's pit crew, whether it's just bad execution all around on the team's part, honestly, a new bit of scenery might be best for Erik Jones. Erik Jones was a stud in the trucks. He was a stud in Xfinity. He's been kind of okay. He's had some great moments of brilliance, like Darlington last year, winning the Southern 500 at age 22. He's had moments of brilliance, but overall, Erik Jones, I would say, has been a little disappointing in that 20 car, especially this season where he's currently 19th in points and in jeopardy of missing the playoffs altogether. A new bit of scenery, a change of pace, if you will, might be perfect for Erik Jones. So honestly, if I was Erik Jones, I would certainly listen to Hendrick Motorsports should they make him an offer. I still don't think Erik Jones is the best decision for Rick Hendrick to make. I mean, Erik Jones is a good driver. I think he's solid. He's young, so at least he's relatively inexpensive compared to Jimmy Johnson. I guess you already have Ally sponsorship lined up, perhaps, so sponsorship probably isn't a big issue for Erik Jones, but Erik Jones is not a big Hendrick personality. I mean, of course, Hendrick in recent years, signing William Byron and Alex Bowman, they've kind of gotten away from, several years ago when they had Dale Jr., Casey Kane, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, the four most popular drivers in the sport on their team. They've kind of changed gears a little bit here. Erik Jones does not sound like a natural fit at Hendrick Motorsports, but I think for Erik Jones at least, if he gets an offer from Hendrick, I would take it if I was Erik Jones. But I don't know that Erik Jones will end up at Hendrick Motorsports. There are a few other drivers that have been mentioned in connection to the 48 car. Tyler Reddick, rookie this year for Richard Childress Racing. His name has been mentioned. Now, I don't know the details of his contract because most NASCAR contracts, driver contracts, are not made public, so we don't know the specifics of them. So it's a lot of speculation, but from what I've heard, it sounds like he's kind of tied up in some complications with Richard Childress Racing. It may be difficult for Hendrick Motorsports to get Tyler Reddick away from Richard Childress next year. I'm not sure how difficult it'll be, but I have heard Reddick's name mentioned, and I think Tyler Reddick would be, honestly, probably a better fit at Hendrick than Erik Jones would be, just because, I don't know, Tyler Reddick already kind of has a relationship with Chevy. He ran for Junior Motorsports one year, or won a championship in 2018 for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, and that's got ties to Rick Hendrick and everything, so he already kind of has a relationship built there. But his situation with Richard Childress Racing is unclear, so I don't know if that's really that likely. We've also heard in recent days Bubba Wallace's name mentioned in possible connection to the 48 car. Now, we'll talk more about Bubba Wallace in a minute because there's a pretty big story developing around him that started this last weekend. But could we see Bubba Wallace perhaps bring some of his own sponsorship to Hendrick Motorsports, a team that, while the 48 car may be funded with Ally, Alex Bowman and the 88, they've kind of struggled for sponsorship this year, kind of piecing things together as they go along. That could be really big for Hendrick Motorsports. Now, of course, a rumor that was reported on, just a few days ago that I did a video on, is that Hendrick Motorsports still very well could downsize. It sounds like they've at least considered that option here in recent weeks. The idea that maybe the 88 car gets shut down for the time being and they just run 3 cars, the 24, the 9, and the 48, and move Alex Bowman over to the 48 with Ally sponsorship. That sounds like that's been discussed internally at Hendrick Motorsports over the last several weeks or several months, but it's unclear yet if that's still a likely option. It still sounds like Rick Hendrick wants to keep a 4th car running, wants to bring a new driver over there, but if sponsorship doesn't work out, if the drivers they want do not become available to them, then perhaps Hendrick Motorsports will not have any other option but to shut down one of their race cars and downsize for at least the 2021 season, but only time will tell regarding that, the future of that team. Now, another driver that we haven't really talked about as far as silly season goes that is possibly affected by this Brad Keselowski news is Matt DiBenedetto. Team Penske, with Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano, they're all locked up into their current situations through at least 2021. Matt DiBenedetto's contract with the Wood brothers this year is kind of unknown at the moment. He's had a decent season. He's 15th on the playoff grid, kind of just sneaking his way into the playoffs at this point, but barring a catastrophic, collapse these next few weeks, he's likely going to make the playoffs in Wood Brothers equipment, which is the first time the 21's been in the playoffs since Blaney drove it a few years back. So overall, I'd say this has been a pretty decent season for Matt DiBenedetto, but his future is unclear. The Wood Brothers Racing 21 car is aligned with Team Penske, and they have a driver named Austin Cindric down in the Xfinity Series who's having a breakout season this year. He's won 3 races in the Xfinity Series. He currently sits second on the playoff grid, but he's actually leading the overall points. So Austin Cindric for Team Penske in the Xfinity Series is having a very strong season. Rumors suggest he could be promoted to the Cup Series sooner rather than later, and when you factor in the fact that his father, Tim Cindric, is the president of Team Penske, those rumors start to gather momentum. Now, I personally don't really think Austin Cindric is ready for full-time competition next year. I mean, last year in the Xfinity Series, when he was going up against guys like Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell and Cole Custer on a weekly basis, Austin Cindric was like a 7th place driver most races. He hadn't won at an oval track until this year. Now, I'm not going to dismiss what he's done this year. This year in the Xfinity Series, Austin Cindric has been absolutely fantastic. It's really been him and Chase Briscoe consistently contending for the wins. But I personally don't think Austin Cindric is ready to be competitive in the Cup Series next year, especially when you got a guy like Matt DiBenedetto in the 21 car, who I personally think is a real NASCAR Cup Series driver, and one day, possibly one day soon, could be a championship contender if put in the absolute best situation. Wood Brothers, it's a Team Penske aligned car, but it's still not a Penske car. So, he's not in the perfect situation yet, but it's certainly the best situation DiBenedetto's been up to this point. But there is a possibility that Austin Cindric could come in and kind of sweep the rug right out from under Matt DiBenedetto, in which case, boy, I have no idea where Dibby would end up at that point. It might be tough sailing for Matt DiBenedetto, but this is all speculation because we really don't know what his contract is at the Wood Brothers. I've just heard that there's a chance it's a 1-year deal this year. There might be options. The team might have an option. The driver might have an option. I'm not really sure, but I think it's safe to say he is not locked in completely for 2021 as of yet. But again, time will tell. I keep saying that. There's still a lot of questions. We know where Brad Keselowski's going now, but this only has opened the door to more potential silly season related questions. But there you have it. There's kind of your broad update as far as NASCAR silly season is concerned. Happy that Brad Keselowski is going to be with a good team next year, but certainly a lot of questions remain. Now, another bit of news that came out this past weekend regards Bubba Wallace and the 43 team. Andrew Murstein, co-owner at Richard Petty Motorsports, spoke to Forbes this past week, and he said, "We're in discussions with Bubba Wallace about an extension that includes ownership in the team." And Murstein also told Forbes that he expects an agreement with Bubba Wallace to be reached within the next couple of weeks. So it sounds pretty likely, perhaps, that Bubba Wallace is going to stay with Richard Petty Motorsports through the 2021 season, and maybe even longer than that if he truly becomes a partial owner in the team. I've seen a few reports that say that Richard Petty Motorsports has offered him 10 to 20% ownership in the team, so not like a majority owner. I think he's not going to become the owner, like the head of Richard Petty Motorsports, but there's money involved in that. There's incentive there for sure. But Andrew Murstein kind of leaking this to the public the way he did, it kind of reeks of desperation, in my opinion. In my video last week, I talked about a report from The Athletic that said Bubba Wallace has had a contract extension with Richard Petty Motorsports just sitting on his desk for months, and he has not signed it yet because he instead has decided to kind of play the field and see what other options may be available. And in that video I did last week, we also talked about recent rumors and discussions that link Bubba Wallace perhaps to the Hendrick Motorsports 48, which we just talked about again, or also possibly to Chip Ganassi Racing, the 42 car, which the future of that car is pretty much unknown beyond this year. With those rumblings sort of circulating throughout the NASCAR media world last week, perhaps Andrew Murstein and the leadership at Richard Petty Motorsports decided to sweeten the deal. I have a feeling that the partial ownership clause of his possible contract extension, I have a feeling that was only added here in the last several days, perhaps in response to the interest Bubba Wallace has been getting from other, more competitive race teams. Now, will that new incentive be enough to entice Bubba Wallace to re-sign with the team? Quite possibly, but it's clear this is a last-ditch effort from Richard Petty Motorsports because most of the sponsorship on that 43 car this year hinges on Bubba Wallace. Worldwide Technology has made a huge investment into that team because of Bubba Wallace. Cash App is there because of Bubba Wallace. McDonald's is there because of Bubba Wallace. If Bubba Wallace walks away from Richard Petty Motorsports and likely takes all that sponsorship with him, not great for Richard Petty Motorsports. Their future becomes very unclear very quickly. So it's clear from Richard Petty Motorsports' perspective that they need to go all in on Bubba Wallace. They need Bubba Wallace to re-sign with the team because that may be the only way they stick around, honestly, unless they can find another driver last second who brings some funding, perhaps. I mean, that might be the last decision they're forced to make. But we talked about last week how this has been a very good season for the 43 team compared to the last couple of years. They made an investment in the offseason, got some slightly better equipment. Bubba Wallace has done a solid job this year. Their average finish this year is 4 positions better than last year, which is a huge improvement. They've cracked the top 20 in points a couple times this year, which again is a huge improvement given they've finished 28th in points the last 2 years. And if Bubba Wallace does stick around and continues to bring in some funding, more sponsors pour into that race team, perhaps they could become more competitive. Perhaps that would be a reason for Bubba Wallace to accept their offer of partial ownership. If Bubba Wallace can help build that team up and make that team more competitive, maybe it is a great long-term option for Bubba Wallace. But personally, if I was Darrell Wallace Jr., Richard Petty Motorsports, it's a smaller operation. It's not worth as much as, obviously Joe Gibbs Racing or Hendrick Motorsports or Team Penske. I'm not saying it's worth nothing. Of course, it's definitely worth something. And like I said, if he's there to help possibly build that team up and make them more competitive, it could still be a great business opportunity, a great financial opportunity for Bubba Wallace. But if I was Bubba Wallace, being a still relatively young race car driver with a long career, a long future ahead of him, and the platform he's recently sort of gotten for himself, I would look to first and foremost get in a more competitive race car in the short term. If Hendrick Motorsports comes knocking, I would have a discussion with them. If Chip Ganassi Racing comes knocking, I would have a discussion with them. If another competitive race team comes to you, if I'm Bubba Wallace, I have that conversation and I am listening with my ears wide open. Richard Petty Motorsports is a great fallback because for all the sponsorship reasons I just mentioned, they're not going to go out and sign another driver right now. They're going to wait on Bubba Wallace's decision before they make their own decision. So you have Richard Petty Motorsports as a fallback, and I think Bubba Wallace knows this. So if I'm Bubba Wallace, I take every meeting with every competitive team I possibly can. And honestly, if the 48 team offers me the ride, if I'm Bubba Wallace, I take it. I just don't think partial ownership in Richard Petty Motorsports is really that big of an incentive when you think about the platform Bubba Wallace has the opportunity to build for himself. Obviously, his face has been in the public eye quite a bit in recent weeks, recent months. His next goal should be to win races consistently, and the quickest way you can do that is by joining a team like Hendrick Motorsports should they give you the offer. If he goes to Hendrick Motorsports next year in 2021, he can win races. I'm not going to say he will win races. I'm still not quite sold on Bubba Wallace as a future Cup Series superstar driver, but he certainly could win races. Whereas right now with Richard Petty Motorsports, outside of the super speedways, he's not winning a race anywhere. So if I'm Bubba Wallace, I would certainly think as a driver first and foremost, what team do you want to drive for next season? What team will give you, the driver, the best opportunity to win races and possibly even contend for a championship or of course make the playoffs? And I just don't think that's Richard Petty Motorsports. I think he's going to have more competitive cars available to him this offseason. But if things happen, if Hendrick downsizes, if Chip Ganassi chooses to go with Ross Chastain or Matt Kenseth stays for some reason, if something else happens, if Richard Petty Motorsports is all you have left, this is a pretty sweet deal to have. It's clear that Richard Petty Motorsports really believes in Bubba Wallace, really believes that he can be the future of that organization, and I think that's great for a young driver to have somebody with that much confidence in him. But again, like I've said 3 or 4 times in this video, only time will tell, and we'll see what happens. Andrew Murstein sounds very confident that a deal is going to be struck here in the next couple of weeks, but I don't know. It sounds desperate to me, and just in my opinion, it sounds a little desperate. We'll see what Bubba Wallace actually decides, but whew, this was a very full episode. Thank you all for watching. That's all I've got. Subscribe if you are new. We talk about NASCAR almost every day of the week at this point. There's always something new right around the corner. But thank you all for watching. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, and of course a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Couldn't do the show without your amazing support. Thank you for supporting the show on Patreon. If you also want to support the show, check out that top link down in the description below. I greatly appreciate it. Didn't really plan on doing a video today. I'm kind of taking the day off, but with this Brad Keselowski news, I had to do something. So we'll likely have other videos up here in the next few days before the Michigan doubleheader this weekend, so stay tuned for more. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you again very, very soon.